Hello, in this video I will show you how to create custom apps for Integromat ecosystem. Let's go to my apps, let's create a new app, and we need to set up basic information about the application. I will be converting Sortly into custom app. Sortly is software for inventory management. Let's save it and let's go to my apps. I think we need to update this page, and here it goes, Sortly app. So let's start with configuring base information. Base structure will be shared across all modules. First thing we need to do is to provide base URL. Let's go to Sortly API documentation. They don't have a base URL section, so we need to be creative and check API calls, API URLs, and decide which part of this URL is shared across all API methods. So you see that API is organized around different entities. For items, for example, we should call api.sortly blah 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 /items. For item variants groups, we need to call api.sortly blah 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 /item groups and some parameters. For units of measure, we need to call api.sortly blah 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 /units. So you see the pattern. This part is shared across all methods, and then we have unique component of URL. So let's use this thing as a base URL. Let's save it. This part of the specification is very important. Don't delete it, and I will show you later how the sanitize specification works. Let's go to connection. Connection is a part of specification that is responsible for authentication process. For authentication process, Sortly requires to provide secret key, and it will be used inside headers, inside parameter authorization. We need to provide bearer space and then our secret key. So let's create connection. Let's label it Sortly app and type. In our case, it should be API key. When you see in your document something like use the secret key, use the token, use the API key, it means that the type should be API key. You see that there are a lot of different types. I will not go into details. You can Google later what it means. API key is the most common type for the authentication, according to my experience. So here we need to specify the validation process. The validation process, it is the steps that your app will perform to check if the API key provided is correct. You see that we don't have anything inside documentation, any recommendations how to set up validation process, but actually we can call any API that is pretty basic, that doesn't modify any entities, and let's just check what should be suitable, what can be used for validation process. First thing, it should be get method, not post, not delete, not put, because put, delete, post are the methods that we used for modifying information. We don't need to modify any piece of information when we validate our API token. So it should be get, and also it should be so basic that it doesn't have any parameters or attributes required to perform this API method. Actually, I've checked all methods and I know that this method is pretty simple and it can be used for validation process. It is get, it doesn't require any parameters or attributes. The only thing we need to receive calling this API just response code 200. It will mean for us that our API key is correct. The exact response body is not important for us. So let's copy this URL. You see that the specification will not inherit from base, so we need the full URL. For headers, we should provide authorization bearer. Let's double check. Authorization bearer and our key. The key should be provided as a parameter, so it should be inside double curly braces. Inside log sanitize, we should replace XAPI key with authorization, because we should sanitize this line of code. Later I will show you how it works. Let's save it and let's go to parameters. Parameters, this section specify how the user interface will look like. We will ask users for API key. We will show them text input with a label, for example, please provide your API key, and this field will be required. So let's save it and let's go to modules. If you used Integromat or Make, you know that all scenarios, all automations consist of steps that perform a particular action. So let's create a module. For connection, we will use Certainly app. We've already created it. And for module action, let's say that we will read information, and we will read information about a particular item. Let's name it as fetch item, label fetch item, description fetch by ID. Let's save it and let's go to the specification. This specification inherits from base, so we don't need to provide full URL. This is the part of URL that is shared, and we need to call items entity. Let's replace, and then we should provide as a variable, as a parameter, an item ID. So I used curly braces. The method should be get, you see, and you see QS. QS stands for query string. Everything that is going after question sign, it is query string. Let's set up our query string. Parameter name include, you see, yes, here it is, and we don't need to provide question sign, it will be appended automatically. And we can include into the response body custom attributes, photos or options, or any combination of these parameters. So we need to use curly braces again, because we need to ask app users what they want to include into the response body. Response body or request body should be empty. It is accordingly to the documentation. And inside headers we should provide authorization And here you can see that to access the API key that is stored inside connection component, we should use this notation. So curly braces again, connection, and from connection we should capture API key. So let's save and let's set up parameters. Our parameters are not static, they are dynamic, so we need to set up this section, mappable parameters. Our parameter number 1 is item ID. The type should be text because we need to render just text input. Label should be something like please provide item ID, and it should be required. And the parameter number 2 is QS, and it should be text as well. Label, let's name it like include, like what would you like to include in the response body, and required false because it is really optional. I think in some cases people don't need custom attributes or photos or options to be included into the response. Maybe they just need basic information about the item. Let's save it, and I think we are ready to debug our application. Before debugging, I will open our developer console, and here you can see Integromat tab. It is a very powerful tool, Integromat dev tool. You can install it from Chrome Web Store and debug your apps like a pro. So let's go to search panel and let's try to find Sortly app. Probably I need to update this page. And here it goes, our private app. Fetch item, our module. Let's set up connection. Please provide your app API key. You remember, we've just configured this text input, this label. And let's go to my notes. Here is my API key. And here you can see what is happening. Integromat is testing connection. Integromat is making request to our validation URL. You see that authorization header is wiped, and you remember this log sanitize section. It is exactly what this section does. It hides the information, so nobody will see in the logs your API key. And the response was 200. It means that our API key is correct. Now let's delete these logs and let's test fetch item module. Here is my item ID, and let's say that I don't need to include any additional information. Let's test it. Here you can see that request was successful. We've called this URL. This part was the base URL. This part is unique for fetch item method, and this is our parameter, and the response body is just basic information about the item ID, label, when it was created, updated, and stuff like this. Let's say that I want to include custom attributes. and test again. Everything is fine again. And here you can see that custom attributes are added. A lot of custom attributes. So we've just made a very simple app that contains one module, connection to the API, and some base information. Thank you for watching it.